The transport ship docked with a heavy clang that echoed through the metal corridors. Taesung grabbed his single bag and stepped onto the research station, his boots magnetic against the floor. The air smelled sterile, recycled too many times. Through the windows, the planet Vrathka hung like a green jewel against the black of space. A woman in a commander's uniform waited at the airlock. She had sharp eyes and crossed arms. Her name tag read Jiwoo. "You're the human they sent," she said. It wasn't a question. Her tone suggested she wasn't impressed. "Taesung, xenobiologist, I study aggressive species." He offered his hand. She looked at it for a moment before shaking. Her grip was firm, testing. "Follow me. We don't have much time for pleasantries." They walked through the station's curved halls. Other crew members stared as they passed. Taesung had expected that. Humans were still new to this part of space, still proving themselves. Most species saw them as weak. Soft skin, no natural weapons, bodies that broke easily. Jiwoo led him to a briefing room. The lights dimmed as a hologram appeared in the center. 3 small creatures played in the projection, tumbling over each other like kittens. They had fur and scales mixed together, big eyes, tiny claws. "Vrathkan cubs," Jiwoo said, 6 months old. "In 2 weeks, they'll begin transformation. Their bodies will change from this," she gestured to the playful cubs, "to apex predators, 7 feet tall, claws that cut through steel, jaws strong enough to crush bone." Taesung watched the cubs play. One of them chirped, a sound like birds singing. "They look harmless." "They are." Right now, Jiwoo pressed a button. The hologram changed. The room filled with medical reports, all marked with red stamps. 17 attempts by other species to stay with cubs during transformation. 17 dead caretakers. The cubs lose all control. Pure instinct takes over. They don't recognize anyone. They just attack. The report showed images Taesung tried not to study too closely. Claw marks, blood, bodies that had been torn apart. "Why does the Vrathkan government want someone to do this?" he asked. "Politics. Alliance building." Jiwoo's expression hardened. "They think humans brag too much about being tough. About enduring things other species can't. This is their test. Survive 3 days with transforming cubs and they'll consider us worthy partners. Fail and we're just another weak species making empty claims. And if I die, then you die. They'll send your body home with honors. The alliance talks will end." She looked directly at him. "I recommended against this mission. I told Earth Command it was suicide. They sent you anyway." Taesung set down his bag. "Can I see them?" "The cubs?" Jiwoo studied him for a long moment. "This way." The habitat was large, built to contain adult Vrathkan. Right now it looked enormous compared to the 3 small cubs inside. They wrestled in one corner, climbing over manufactured rocks and through artificial plants. Standing outside the reinforced glass was the biggest alien Taesung had ever seen. The creature stood 7 feet tall with a body that mixed feline grace and reptilian power. Scales covered his arms, fur lined his neck. His eyes were amber and intelligent. He wore decorated armor that marked him as important. "Hyunwoo," Jiwoo said, "ambassador and leader of the elite guard. He'll observe the trial." Hyunwoo's gaze moved to Taesung. The human barely reached his chest. Another human come to die. His voice rumbled like distant thunder. "Your kind is brave, I'll grant that. But bravery without strength is just foolishness." "Maybe," Taesung said. He pressed his hand against the glass. Inside, one of the cubs noticed the movement. It bounded over, pressing its small paws against the window. "What are their names?" "Names?" Hyunwoo seemed surprised by the question. "They're cubs. They won't remember this time after transformation, but they have names now." A pause. "Rek, Sulla, and Vorn. Rek is the bold one. Sulla is curious. Vorn is cautious." Taesung watched them. Rek was indeed the boldest, already trying to climb the wall to reach his hand. Sulla investigated everything, sniffing at plants and rocks. Vorn watched from a distance, studying him. "When can I go inside?" Taesung asked. Jiwoo and Hyunwoo exchanged looks. "You want to start now?" Jiwoo asked. 2 weeks isn't much time to build trust." "Trust won't save you when they transform," Hyunwoo said. "Their minds will be gone. Pain will drive them. Instinct will rule them. They'll tear you apart before they even know what they're doing." Taesung turned from the window. "Then I'll need to make sure some part of them knows me even when their minds are gone. I need to be in their instincts, in their deep memory. That takes time." "Impossible," Hyunwoo said flatly. "We've studied transformation for thousands of years." Once it begins, there's no recognition, no bond strong enough to survive it. Have you tried? Taesung asked. Have your people actually tried to stay close during transformation? Or do you isolate them, restrain them? Hyunwoo's scales rippled, a sign of irritation. We protect ourselves in them. We're not fools. I read the historical records on the way here, Taesung said quietly. Old records from before your species became advanced. Cubs who survived transformation in the wild had pack members nearby. Those pack members got hurt, sometimes killed, but their presence helped cubs stay anchored, kept them from losing themselves completely. Primitive nonsense, Hyunwoo growled. We've evolved beyond such things. Maybe. Or maybe you forgot something important when you evolved. Taesung looked back at the cubs. Rek was still at the window, chirping at him. I'd like to go inside now. Jiwoo pulled up a data pad. You'll need to sign waivers. A lot of them. Medical understands you'll likely die. We won't intervene unless you call for extraction. I understand. And you still want to do this? Taesung thought about Earth, about humanity trying to find its place among species that had explored the stars for millennia. Someone had to take risks. Someone had to show that humans were more than just soft skin and fragile bones. Yes. An hour later, after signing documents and getting medical scans, Taesung stood at the habitat entrance. Through the door, he could hear the cubs playing. They made sounds like purring mixed with bird calls. Jiwoo stood beside him. Last chance to back out. I know. The elite guard will watch constantly. They expect you to fail. I know that too, she sighed. Then good luck. Try not to die. The door opened. Taesung stepped inside. 3 pairs of eyes immediately locked onto him. The cubs froze, assessing this new creature in their space. Rek's ears flattened. Sulla crouched low. Vorn retreated to the far wall. Taesung sat down slowly, making himself small. He didn't look directly at them. He'd learned that with aggressive species, direct eye contact meant challenge. Instead, he waited. Minutes passed. The cubs watched him. He watched the walls, the floor, anywhere but them. Finally, Sulla's curiosity won. The cub crept forward, sniffing the air. Closer, closer. A small paw touched Taesung's leg. He didn't move. Sulla sniffed his boot, his pants working up toward his hand. Taesung slowly extended his fingers. Sulla sniffed them, then made a small chirp. Not aggressive, curious. Rek bounded over, not wanting to be left out. He pushed Sulla aside and climbed directly into Taesung's lap. The cub was heavier than he looked, all muscle under soft fur and scales. Only Vorn remained distant, watching with careful eyes. Taesung smiled. 2 weeks. He had 2 weeks to become part of their world, to make them know him so deeply that even transformation couldn't erase it. Outside the glass, Hyunwoo watched with crossed arms. Behind him, 4 members of the elite guard took notes. They all wore the same expression. This human would be dead within days of transformation starting. It was just a matter of time. Days blurred together. Taesung moved into the habitat completely, sleeping on a mat in the corner while the cubs nested near him. He learned their rhythms, their moods, their individual personalities. Rek was indeed the boldest. He tested everything, including Taesung. The cub would pounce on him during sleep, claws out in play that left scratches across his arms. Each morning, Taesung visited the medical bay where Da-eun, the station's medical officer, cleaned and sealed the wounds. These are getting deeper, Da-eun said, running a scanner over his shoulder. She was efficient and direct, never wasting words. In a week, these playful scratches will become lethal strikes. I know. Taesung winced as she applied synthetic skin. But if I avoid him now, he won't trust me later. There might not be a later for you. She finished the treatment. You're down 2 pounds. Not eating enough. The cubs eat first. I eat what's left. That's not sustainable. It's how pack dynamics work. I'm establishing hierarchy. They need to see me as pack, not food. Da-eun shook her head. You humans are strange. Any other species would maintain distance. Preserve their safety. Any other species is dead, Taesung pointed out. She couldn't argue with that. Back in the habitat, Sulla had discovered Taesung's data pad. The curious cub batted it across the floor, chirping with delight. Taesung spent an hour teaching Sulla to be gentle with objects. It was slow work. The cub's instinct was to bite, scratch, tear. But eventually, Sulla learned to touch softly, rewarded with treats and ear scratches. Vorn remained the challenge. The cautious cub observed from a distance, never approaching directly. Taesung didn't force it. Trust couldn't be rushed, especially with the careful ones. A young researcher named Kyung-ho visited daily, documenting everything through cameras. He'd set up equipment around the habitat, recording from every angle. "This is incredible," Kyung-ho said through the speaker system. "Rek and Sola have accepted you completely. They groom you like you're another cub." It was true. Both cubs licked his hair flat each morning, their rough tongues pulling hard enough to hurt. Taesung endured it. Pack members groomed each other. It was bonding, trust made physical. "What about Vorn?" Jiwoo asked. She visited less often than Kyung-ho, but always watched with sharp attention. "He's listening," Taesung said. "Watch." Taesung pulled out a piece of dried meat. He held it up, then tossed it to Vorn. The cub caught it easily, chewing while maintaining eye contact. Cautious but accepting offerings. 5 days until transformation, Jiwoo said. "You should be preparing to distance yourself." "That's the opposite of what I need to do." Through the window, he could see Hyunwoo approaching. The ambassador visited twice daily, always watching with those amber eyes. Behind him walked a Vrathkan female, smaller but still larger than any human. Her scales were darker, her movements precise. "That's Aaron," Kyung-ho said. "Juvenile psychologist. She's been studying your methods." The two Vrathkan entered an observation room attached to the habitat. Their voices came through speakers. "He's making an error," Hyunwoo said, getting closer when he should retreat. "Perhaps." Aaron's voice was softer than Hyunwoo's rumble. "Or perhaps we're the ones who've been making errors." "Explain." "I've been reviewing the old texts. Before we built cities, before we had technology, our ancestors kept pack bonds during transformation. The violence still happened, but pack members endured it. Their presence helped the transforming cubs maintain some connection to reality. We abandoned those practices because they were dangerous, unnecessary. We abandoned them because we could. We had medical technology, restraint, sedation, but what if those tools replaced something important? What if the pain of transformation is meant to be shared?" Hyunwoo was silent for a long moment. "You're suggesting this human is right? That closeness during transformation is beneficial? I'm suggesting we don't know. We haven't tried in thousands of years." Taesung listened while playing with Rek. The cub had grown noticeably larger, his baby fat turning to muscle. All 3 cubs were changing, eating more, sleeping less. Transformation was coming. That night, Taesung worked on his secret project. He'd brought equipment from Earth, small synthesizers that could create specific chemical compounds. He was making pheromones, a mixture of human sweat compounds and Vrathkan comfort scents he'd identified in the cubs. The idea was simple. When the cubs transformed, their rational minds would disappear. But smell was primal, processed in the oldest parts of the brain. If he could surround himself with familiar, comforting scents, it might give him an edge. It might help them recognize him through the rage and pain. Da-eun had helped him identify the right compounds, though she thought it was useless. "Scent won't stop claws," she'd said. "No, but it might slow them. Give them a moment of hesitation. A moment might be enough to remind them who he was." 3 days before transformation, Vorn finally approached him. Taesung was singing, an old Korean lullaby his grandmother taught him. He sang it every night, letting the cubs associate the sound with safety and sleep. Vorn crept closer, drawn by the melody. The cautious cub had been listening for weeks, memorizing the pattern. Now he wanted to be near the source. Taesung kept singing, not looking at Vorn directly. The cub came closer, closer. Finally, Vorn pressed against his side, curling up while Taesung's voice washed over him. All 3 cubs were with him now. The pack was complete. Kyung-ho's excited voice came through the speakers. "You did it! All 3 have bonded with you." In the observation room, even Hyunwoo looked impressed. "I've never seen a cross-species bond form so quickly." "It's not quick," Aaron corrected. "He's been here every moment. Sleeping here, eating here, living by their rules. He's made himself vulnerable, and they've accepted that vulnerability." Hyunwoo's tail twitched. "Vulnerability? Humans excel at that." "Yes," Aaron said quietly. "And perhaps that's been their strength all along, not their weakness." 2 days before transformation, the cubs became aggressive. Rek snapped at Taesung during feeding time, drawing blood from his hand. Sela's play became rougher, claws no longer retracting. Vorn paced constantly, agitated. Tae-sung increased contact. He held them more, sang more, kept his scent device running constantly. The cubs were confused by their changing bodies, frightened by new instincts flooding their minds. Dayun treated a deep bite on Tae-sung's arm. This is just the pre-transformation phase. When it actually starts and I know what's coming, do you? Really? She grabbed his shoulders, forcing him to look at her. I've seen the records. Caretakers torn in half, spines ripped out, skulls crushed. That's what's coming, Tae-sung. 3 days of that, I know. And you're still doing this? He thought about the cubs. About Rek's bold challenges and Sulla's curious nature and Vorn's careful trust. He thought about how they curled up with him at night, chirping softly in their sleep. They're scared, he said simply. They don't understand what's happening to their bodies. If I leave them now, they'll go through it alone. Terrified and alone. They're not human children. They're predators. They're both. He pulled his arm back. And they're my pack. The day before transformation, Jiwoo called him to the observation room. The elite guard had assembled, 12 Vrathkan warriors in full armor. Hyunwoo stood at their center. Final briefing, Jiwoo said. Transformation will begin tomorrow morning, station time. Once it starts, we will not intervene unless you call for extraction. Do you understand? Yes. You can call for extraction at any time. There's no shame in survival. Hyunwoo stepped forward. I thought you were a fool, human. Part of me still does. But you've done something unexpected. You've made those cubs trust you completely. They see you as pack. That's the goal. It won't save you. When transformation comes, they won't remember. They won't care. They'll attack anything near them. Maybe, but I have to try. Hyunwoo studied him. Why? Your life is worth more than proving a point. Tae-sung looked through the window. The cubs were wrestling, still playing despite their growing aggression. Because 17 caretakers died. 17 beings tried to help cubs through transformation and failed. Maybe they failed because they kept their distance. Maybe they failed because they saw it as a trial to survive, instead of pain to share. Poetic? Words won't stop claws. No, but love might. The word hung in the air. Love. It sounded strange, applied to alien predators. But Tae-sung meant it. He'd spent weeks living with these cubs, learning them, caring for them. They were his pack now, and pack didn't abandon each other. That night, Tae-sung didn't sleep. He held all 3 cubs close, singing his grandmother's lullaby over and over. They were restless, uncomfortable, their bodies preparing for the change. Tomorrow would bring pain, blood, possibly death. But tonight, they were together. A human and 3 predator cubs bound by something deeper than species. Pack. The transformation started at dawn. Tae-sung was singing when Rek's body convulsed. The cub's back arched, a scream tearing from his throat that didn't sound like anything Tae-sung had heard before. It was agony made sound. It's starting. Kyung-ho's voice came through the speakers, tight with tension. Tae-sung moved closer to Rek, not away. He wrapped his arms around the convulsing cub, holding tight. Rek's body was hot, burning with the energy of rapid change. Muscles rippled under fur and scales, bones cracking and reforming. Sulla started next. Then Vorn. Within minutes, all 3 cubs were screaming, their bodies transforming in violent spasms, the habitat filled with the sounds of breaking bones and tearing tissue. In the observation room, the elite guard watched. Daeon stood with medical equipment ready. Seok-jin, the trauma surgeon, waited beside her with a full emergency team. Jiwoo's hand hovered over the extraction button. Stay calm, Tae-sung whispered to the cubs, knowing they couldn't understand anymore. Their minds were drowning in pain. He activated the pheromone device on his chest, flooding the air with familiar scents. He kept singing the same lullaby over and over. Rek struck first. The cub's eyes were wild, unfocused. His paw lashed out, claws extended. They caught Tae-sung across the chest, tearing through his shirt and into skin. 4 deep cuts, bleeding immediately. Tae-sung gasped but didn't let go. He tightened his grip on Rek, speaking in low tones. I'm here. You're safe. I'm not leaving. Rek struck again. And again. Each blow tore new wounds. Blood soaked through Tae-sung's clothes. He needs extraction. Taeyoon shouted at Jiwoo. Not unless he calls for it. Jiwoo's face was pale, but her voice was steady. Those are the rules. Sulla joined the attack, confused and terrified by her changing body. Her claws raked across Tae-sung's back. He turned, trying to shield himself while maintaining contact. He couldn't fight back. Fighting would confirm him as a threat, an enemy. He had to be Pack even while they tore him apart. Vorn was the most vicious. The cautious cub, pushed beyond his limits by pain, launched at Tae-sung's throat. Only a last-second movement saved the human from a killing blow. Instead, Vorn's teeth sank into his shoulder, grinding against bone. Tae-sung screamed. Couldn't help it. The pain was incredible, but he forced his arms around Vorn, holding the cub close even as teeth tore muscle. Pack, he gasped. You're Pack. I'm Pack. We're Pack. The words meant nothing to the cubs. Their minds were gone, lost in transformation agony. But Tae-sung kept saying them anyway, a mantra against the pain. Hours passed. The cubs' attacks came in waves, matching the waves of their transformation. Their bodies grew larger, muscles bulking with impossible speed. Baby claws became weapons. Small teeth became fangs. Tae-sung endured each strike, each bite, wrapping himself around whichever cub was closest. The habitat floor became slick with blood. All of it human. Tae-sung's shirt was in shreds. Deep cuts covered his arms, chest, back. His left shoulder hung wrong where Vorn had bitten through muscle. 6 hours, Kyung-ho reported, his voice shaking.
He's lasted 6 hours. Hyunwoo watched in silence.
The ambassador's expression was unreadable, but his tail had stopped twitching. Aaron stood beside him, making notes with trembling hands. I've never seen anything like this, Aaron whispered. The pain he must be in. Why doesn't he call for extraction? One of the elite guard asked. Pride? No, Hyunwoo said slowly. Look at his eyes. They looked. Tae-sung's face was pale from blood loss, twisted with pain, but his eyes were focused, clear. He wasn't enduring this for pride or to prove something. He was doing it for the cubs. Every time he wrapped around them, every time he held them through a convulsion, he was trying to comfort them. He's insane, the guard said. Perhaps, Hyunwoo agreed. Or perhaps we've forgotten what true Pack loyalty looks like. Hour 12 arrived. Tae-sung's left arm was broken. Grek had struck it during a particularly violent spasm. The force-snapping bone. Tae-sung cradled it against his chest, using his right arm to maintain contact with the cubs. His singing had become raspy. Blood loss was making him dizzy, but he kept going, the same lullaby over and over. It was all he had left to give them. Sula was changing the most dramatically. Her body stretched, bones lengthening. She was becoming the largest of the three. During one transformation wave, she thrashed wildly, her tail whipping around to strike Tae-sung's ribs. The crack echoed through the habitat. Tae-sung collapsed, unable to breathe properly with broken ribs. Sulla, still mindless with pain, pounced on him. Her weight crushed him further into the floor. Claws dug into his sides. But then something strange happened. Sulla paused, her nose, now much larger and more sensitive, pressed against Tae-sung's neck. She breathed in deeply, smelling the pheromones, the familiar scent buried under all the blood. A sound emerged from her throat, not a growl, a whimper. Confused, pained, but recognizing something, it lasted only a second. Then another transformation wave hit her, and the recognition vanished. But Tae-sung had seen it, felt it. Some part of her knew him, even through the transformation fog. Did you see that? Kyung-ho asked. She hesitated. Coincidence, one of the elite guard said. But he didn't sound certain. Hour 18. Tae-sung was fading. Blood loss, broken bones, exhaustion. His body was shutting down. Daeun monitored his vital signs remotely, her face grim. His blood pressure is dropping, she reported. He's going into shock. Can we intervene medically without extracting him? Jiwoo asked. Not safely. He needs immediate surgery. Would he survive extraction and surgery? Daeun hesitated. Maybe, 50-50 chance. And if we leave him? He'll die in there. Probably within the next few hours. Jiwoo's hand moved toward the extraction button, but she stopped, watching the monitor. Tae-sung was still conscious, still trying to hold the cubs. His lips moved, though no sound came out anymore. He was still singing, even though his voice was gone. He hasn't called for extraction, Hyunwoo said quietly. Even now, dying, he hasn't called for it. Because he can't, Jiwoo said. He's too far gone. No, look at his hand. Tae-sung's right hand was visible on the camera. It was near the emergency call button built into his suit collar. He could reach it. But he wasn't trying to. His hand instead rested on Vorn's massive head, fingers tangled in fur. He knows he's dying, Aaron said softly. And he's choosing to stay. The cubs were changing faster now, their bodies reaching the final phase of transformation. They were huge, adult-sized, powerful beyond measure, and still they struck at the broken human in their midst. But the attacks were different now. Less frequent. More confused. Vorn would slash, then stop and sniff. Rek would bite, then pull back and whine. Sulla would pounce, then hesitate, nose working. The pheromones were everywhere, mixed with blood. The lullaby's melody had imprinted on their developing brains. And Taesung's scent, the weeks of constant contact, was buried deep in their changing minds. They didn't understand what they were feeling. Their conscious thoughts were still drowned in pain. But instinct was recognizing something. Pack, safety, home, hour 20. Taesung's eyes closed. His breathing was shallow, barely there. "He's unconscious," Daun said. "Jiwoo, we have to extract him now or he'll die." Jiwoo's finger touched the button. "Wait," Hyunwoo said. "He's dying." Look, all 3 cubs had stopped attacking. They stood around Taesung's broken body, their massive forms dwarfing him. Their transformation was still ongoing, bodies still shifting, but their attention was fixed on the human. Rek lowered his head, pressing his nose against Taesung's face. A deep rumbling sound came from his chest. Not a growl. Something else. Sulla did the same, her larger body curling around Taesung protectively. Vorn, the cautious one, the last to trust, placed his enormous paw on Taesung's chest. Gently, carefully, the way Taesung had touched them so many times. "They recognize him," Aaron breathed. "Even through transformation, they recognize him." Hour 24. The first day of transformation ended. The cubs' bodies had stabilized temporarily, giving them a brief respite from pain. They used that respite to do something unexpected. They began grooming Taesung. Their massive tongues, rough enough to strip flesh from bone, moved carefully over his wounds. Cleaning. Caring. The same way Taesung had cared for them. "I don't believe it," one of the elite guard whispered. "They're protecting him." Hyunwoo watched in silence. His entire understanding of transformation was crumbling. For thousands of years, his people had believed that transformation erased all bonds, all recognition. They had isolated their cubs, restrained them, kept them safe through distance. But this human had proved them wrong. He'd stayed close, endured the violence, and somehow his presence had anchored the cubs. They were still transforming, still dangerous, but they weren't mindless beasts. Part of them remained, buried deep but present. Pack bonds didn't break during transformation. They just had to be strong enough, deep enough to survive the storm. Daeun's medical drones entered the habitat, moving carefully around the cubs. They began working on Taesung, sealing wounds, setting bones, pumping him full of artificial blood and stimulants. It wasn't full surgery, but it was enough to keep him alive. The cubs watched the drones with suspicion but didn't attack. They seemed to understand on some instinctive level that the drones were helping their pack member. 48 hours left, Kyung-ho said quietly. "Can he survive 2 more days of this?" No one answered. Because no one knew. Taesung had already survived longer than any caretaker in recorded history. But the worst was still coming. Taesung woke to pain. Every part of his body screamed. The medical drones had done their work, keeping him alive through the night, but they couldn't erase what had been done. His left arm was stabilized in a medical cast. His ribs were wrapped. Synthetic skin covered the worst cuts, but he could feel dozens of wounds beneath. The cubs slept around him, their massive bodies forming a protective circle. Even unconscious, they guarded him. Rek's tail was draped across his legs. Sulla's head rested near his shoulder. Vorn, always cautious, slept between him and the door. They had grown so much. In just one day, they'd transformed from small, playful creatures into something powerful and dangerous. But they were still changing. Another 2 days of transformation remained. "Taesung?" Daeun's voice came through the speakers. "Can you hear me?" He tried to speak, but his throat was too dry. He managed a small nod instead. "You survived the first day. That's more than anyone expected." She paused. "I can extract you now. You've proven the point. You lasted longer than any other caretaker. No one will think less of you for leaving." Taesung looked at the cubs. At Rek, whose boldness had turned to fierce protectiveness. At Sulla, whose curiosity had become awareness. At Vorn, whose caution had become calculated loyalty. He shook his head. "You'll die if you stay," Daun said. "The next 2 days will be worse. Their bodies are entering the final transformation phase. More muscle growth, bone density increase, neurological rewiring. The pain will be worse than yesterday. They'll be more violent. Taesung's hand moved to his throat, touching the voice amplifier the medical drones had attached. He pressed it and his whisper became audible. "Pack," he said simply. On Earth, millions watched the live feed. The transmission had spread across human space. News agencies broadcast it. Social media exploded with debates. Was Taesung a hero or a fool? Was he proving human endurance or just dying slowly for alien politics? A woman named Yeon-soo, the station's communications officer, monitored the feeds. Messages poured in from Earth. The government offered extraction again. Medical experts said his survival was impossible. But scattered among the professional opinions were messages from ordinary people. Don't give up. Stay strong. Show them what humans can do. Yeon-soo didn't show Taesung these messages. He didn't need the pressure. But she felt it. The weight of humanity's expectations resting on one broken man in a habitat with 3 predators. The cubs woke as the second day's transformation began. Their bodies convulsed immediately, harder than before. Rex's spine arched impossibly, vertebrae cracking and reforming. Sulla's skull shifted, her jaw elongating, teeth growing. Vorn's muscles rippled, doubling in size. The screaming started again. Not the cries of cubs anymore, but the roars of apex predators in agony. Taesung forced himself upright, ignoring his body's protests. He activated the pheromone device again, flooding the habitat with familiar scents. He couldn't sing anymore, his voice destroyed, but he hummed. A broken, raspy sound, but still the same melody. Rek attacked first, but differently than yesterday. His movements were calculated now, predatory. He circled Taesung, testing, looking for weakness. The transformation was rebuilding his brain, adding new neural pathways for hunting and fighting. When Rek struck, it was with the precision of an adult predator. Claws aimed for the throat. Taesung barely dodged, the blow catching his shoulder instead. The cast on his left arm shattered. Pain blinded him, but he lunged forward, wrapping his good arm around Rek's neck. "Holding on." The cub thrashed, trying to throw him off, but Taesung held tight. His weight meant nothing to the powerful predator, but his presence meant everything. "Remember," Taesung whispered against Rek's ear. "Remember me." "Remember, Pack?" Rek's thrashing slowed. His nose worked, breathing in the pheromones, the scent of the human who had lived with him for weeks. The recognition was stronger today, cutting through the pain fog. Rek made a sound, half growl, half whine. Then another transformation wave hit and the recognition shattered. Rek threw Taesung off, sending him crashing into the wall. The human's head hit stone. Blood ran from a cut above his eye. Sulla was next, larger, stronger, more powerful than her brothers. She didn't circle. She pounced, landing on Taesung with crushing force. Her jaws opened wide, capable now of severing his head with one bite. The elite guard moved forward, ready to intervene. Hyunwoo raised a hand, stopping them. "Wait." Sulla's jaws closed around Taesung's throat. Not biting, just holding, feeling his pulse against her teeth, smelling him, knowing him. "I'm here," Taesung whispered despite the teeth at his throat. "I'm not leaving. Not ever." Sulla's eyes, still wild with pain, seemed to focus, just for a moment. Then she released him, backing away confused. Her transformation-addled mind couldn't understand why she wasn't killing this prey. But instinct knew. Pack didn't kill Pack. Vorn's attack was the most dangerous. The cautious cub had analyzed the situation with his developing predator brain. He'd watched his siblings fail to eliminate the threat. Now he would succeed where they'd failed. He came from behind, silent, perfect predator form, his jaws aimed for Taesung's spine. "Behind you!" Kyung-ho shouted through the speakers. Taesung couldn't turn fast enough. Couldn't dodge. Vorn's weight hit him, teeth finding purchase on his back. The human felt teeth scrape vertebrae, pressure building to crush bone. This was it. This was how he died. But then Vorn stopped. The pressure remained. Teeth still touching spine, but not crushing. Vorn's nose pressed against the back of Taesung's neck, breathing deeply. The cautious one, the careful one, was thinking even through transformation. Analyzing. This scent was Pack. This creature was home. Killing him felt wrong. Vorn released him and backed away, shaking his massive head. Confused, in pain, not understanding why his instincts warred with his transformation-driven violence. All 3 cubs retreated to different corners of the habitat, their bodies continuing to change. Taesung collapsed in the center, barely conscious. Daeyun's medical drone swarmed him again, working frantically. "I can't keep doing this," Daeun said, her voice breaking. "His body can't take much more damage. The drones can seal wounds, but they can't fix everything. His organs are starting to shut down from trauma." Jiwoo looked at Hyunwoo. "We're ending this. I'm extracting him." "No." Hyunwoo's voice was firm. "Look." The cubs were watching Taesung. Even in their agony, even as their bodies continued transforming, they watched. Concerned. Protective. Fighting their own pain-driven violence to avoid hurting him further. "They're learning," Erin said, wonder in her voice. "Each time they attack, they stop themselves faster. Their recognition of him is growing stronger, even as their predator instincts grow stronger. They're learning to balance both." "He's teaching them," Hyunwoo realized, "not with words or training, just by being there, by surviving. They're learning that Pack endures, Pack protects, Pack doesn't abandon." Hour 36. The cubs' transformations reached their peak. Their bodies were nearly adult-sized now, packed with muscle and natural weapons. This was the most dangerous phase when power met pain at its worst. Taesung forced himself to stand. His body was broken, barely functional. But he stood. He walked to the center of the habitat. He opened his arms. "Come here," he whispered through the amplifier. "All of you." "Come here," the cubs hesitated. Their instincts screamed to attack, to eliminate, to hunt, but something deeper pulled them forward. Rek came first, always the boldest. He pressed against Taesung, and the human wrapped his good arm around the massive predator. Rek's body vibrated with transformation energy, but he held still. Sulla came next, curling her larger body around both of them. Her rumbling became a purr, a sound of comfort despite her pain. Vorn, cautious as always, took longest. But finally he joined the pile, completing the circle. 3 massive predators and 1 broken human, tangled together in the center of the habitat. They stayed like that for hours. When transformation waves hit, the cubs would tense, sometimes strike out, but they always stopped themselves. Always returned to the pile. To Pack, to home. The elite guard watched in silence. Several were crying, though they tried to hide it. They'd never seen anything like this. Never imagined it was possible. "Our ancestors knew this," Hyunwoo said quietly. "They knew that transformation wasn't meant to be survived alone. We forgot. We thought we'd evolved beyond the need for pack bonds during transformation. We were wrong," Aaron nodded. "We isolated our cubs to protect ourselves. But we should have been protecting them. Through presence, through endurance, through love." That word again. Love. Applied to predators and prey, to aliens and humans, to violence and tenderness mixed together. Hour 48. The second day ended. Taesung was still alive, though barely. The cubs had stabilized again, their bodies resting before the final day of transformation. They didn't groom him this time. Instead, they each laid their heads on him, covering him with their warmth, protecting, guarding. A message came from Earth. The government had been watching. The military, scientists, regular citizens, all of humanity had witnessed what happened here. The message was simple. "We're proud of you. All of us, don't give up." Taesung couldn't read it. He was unconscious, his body shutting down to preserve what little energy remained. But somewhere deep inside he knew. He'd lasted 2 days. 1 more to go. If he survived the final day, he would prove something important. Not just that humans were tough, but that connection mattered more than strength. That staying mattered more than surviving. That love could bridge any gap, even between species, even through violence. 1 more day. That was all. The third day began differently. Taesung woke to find the cubs already awake, sitting around him in a protective formation. They weren't attacking. They were waiting, guarding him while he recovered enough strength for the final day. Their bodies had changed dramatically. Rex stood nearly 7 feet tall, his scales gleaming, muscles defined and powerful. Sulla was even larger, the biggest of the 3, her presence commanding. Vorn had become lean and deadly, every movement precise and controlled. They were adults now, apex predators in their final transformation phase, and yet they sat calmly around the broken human who had refused to abandon them. Final day. Daeun's voice came through the speakers. She sounded exhausted. "Their transformation will complete today. This is usually when cubs become fully conscious again. Their minds return, but they don't remember anything from the transformation." Taesung touched Rek's massive paw. The cub, now adult, looked down at him with eyes that seemed clearer. More aware. Will they remember me? He asked through the amplifier. According to our records, no. They'll be confused. Sometimes they attack their caretakers again, thinking they're strangers. That's why most Vrathkun keep cubs restrained during this final phase. Tae-sung looked at each of them, at Rek, whose boldness had kept them moving forward, at Sula, whose curiosity had helped them adapt, at Vorn, whose caution had taught them when to hold back. They'll remember, he said quietly. Maybe not with their minds, but their instincts will know. The final transformation waves began, but these were different, less violent. The cubs' bodies were mostly formed now. These final changes were neurological, their brains completing their development, consciousness slowly returning through the fog of transformation. When pain hit them, they didn't attack Tae-sung. They moved away instead, retreating to corners to endure their private agony, protecting him from themselves. Hyun-woo entered the observation room accompanied by a human Tae-sung didn't recognize. The man wore diplomatic insignia. Earth's envoy. That's Jae-sung, Kyung-ho explained quietly. He arrived yesterday for the alliance negotiations. He's been watching the feeds. Jae-sung stood at the window watching Tae-sung and the cubs. If he survives this, the alliance is guaranteed. Earth's council has made that clear. But more importantly, this changes everything we thought we knew about human-alien relations. How so? Ji-woo asked. We've been trying to prove we're strong, militarily, technologically, economically. But this, he gestured to the habitat, this shows a different kind of strength. The strength to endure, to stay present in pain, to love something that's hurting you. Hyun-woo's tail twitched in agreement. My people thought humans were weak, fragile. Now I think we confused physical softness with weakness. Your bodies may be soft, but your will is like steel wrapped in determination. Hour 60. Sulla was first to fully complete transformation. Her body stopped convulsing. Her breathing steadied. She stood slowly, testing her new form. Powerful, deadly, beautiful. Her eyes opened fully, consciousness returning. She looked around the habitat, confused. Her gaze found Tae-sung sitting against the wall covered in blood and bandages. For a moment, no one breathed. This was the critical moment. Would she recognize him? Or would she see a stranger in her territory? Sulla approached slowly. Tae-sung didn't move, couldn't move. He was too weak. He simply watched as the massive predator came closer, her new adult senses analyzing him. She stopped inches away. Her nose, now incredibly sensitive, worked over him, taking in his scent, the pheromones, the blood. The weeks of constant contact buried under layers of trauma. Then she did something unexpected. She lay down, pressing her massive head into his lap, the same way she'd done as a cub when she wanted comfort. She remembered, maybe not consciously, maybe not with clear memories, but her instincts knew. This human was Pac. This human had stayed. This human was home. Tae-sung's good hand moved to her head, fingers tangling in fur. Good girl, he whispered. You did so well. Rek completed transformation next. The bold one stood and immediately looked for Tae-sung. Found him with Sulla. Rek bounded over, his new adult grace mixed with cub-like enthusiasm. He pressed against Tae-sung's other side, making the rumbling purr sound that meant contentment. Vorn took longest, as always cautious. When he finally completed transformation, he stood at a distance, studying Tae-sung with intelligent eyes, analyzing, remembering. Then he approached, slowly, carefully. He touched his nose to Tae-sung's forehead the way Tae-sung had touched his so many times. Recognition, acceptance, gratitude. It's over, Kyung-ho said, his voice filled with emotion. He survived. All 3 days. He actually survived. The observation room erupted. The elite guard made sounds of approval, their version of cheering. Taeyun wiped her eyes. Ji-woo slumped in her chair, relief overwhelming her. Even Hun-woo's rigid posture softened. Jae-sung spoke into his communicator. Earth Council, this is Envoy Jae-sung. The trial is complete. Tae-sung has survived. The alliance is secured. But in the habitat, Tae-sung heard none of this. He was surrounded by 3 massive predators who had imprinted on him as Pac, who had learned that bonds could survive anything, even transformation, who had discovered that love wasn't a weakness but the strongest force in the universe. We need to extract him now, Daun said. Medical treatment, surgery, recovery. Wait, Aaron said. The cubs are still adjusting. If we take him away now, it might traumatize them. They've bonded completely with him. He needs medical care. Then bring medical care to him. Let him recover in the habitat. Let the cubs see that he survives, that he's healing. It's important for their development. Jiwoo considered this, then nodded. Do it! Full medical team in the habitat. Careful around the cubs. Seok Jin and his team entered slowly, equipment floating on anti-gravity platforms. The cubs watched but didn't interfere. They seemed to understand these people were helping their pack member. Over the next 3 hours, Seok Jin performed field surgery, setting bones properly, repairing organs, replacing synthetic skin with regenerative grafts. The cubs lay nearby, watching every movement, ready to defend Taesung if needed. Remarkable, Seok Jin said as he worked. His injuries should have killed him 3 times over. But he kept going. Human endurance is exceptional, but this goes beyond that. This is pure will. A week later, Taesung was recovered enough to walk. His body was still healing, would be for months. Scars covered his arms, chest, back, physical reminders of what he'd endured. The cubs followed him everywhere. When he slept, they slept nearby. When he ate, they brought him food. When he walked, they walked with him, protective and gentle. Hyunwoo visited the habitat, this time entering it directly. The cubs watched him warily but didn't challenge him. Taesung had accepted this visitor, so they would too. I came to apologize, Hyunwoo said. I called you weak. Called your species soft. I was wrong. Humans possess a strength my people forgot existed. You weren't entirely wrong, Taesung said. He touched his scarred arm. We are soft. We do break easily. But that's not the same as weak. No, it's not. Hyunwoo looked at the cubs. You've done something no one has done in thousands of years. You've proven that transformation doesn't have to mean isolation. That presence during pain is possible. You've given my people back something we lost. What's that? The understanding that pack bonds matter more than protection. That sometimes the best way to keep someone safe is to stay with them through the danger, not to remove them from it. A young Vrathkan female entered the habitat nervously. She was accompanied by Aaron. The psychologist introduced her. This is Hwan. Her caretaker died during her transformation 5 years ago. She struggled with that loss, with the guilt of not remembering what happened. I thought meeting you might help. Hwan approached slowly. She was smaller than the cubs, younger.
Did they hurt you?
She asked quietly. Yes, Taesung said honestly. Very much. But you stayed, yes. Why? Why would you endure that? Taesung looked at Rek, Sulla, and Vorn. Because they needed me. Because pack doesn't abandon each other, even when it hurts, even when it's dangerous. Hwan's eyes filled with tears. My caretaker tried to stay, but the pain was too much. They called for extraction. They survived, but I lost them anyway. I've always thought it was my fault, that I was too violent, too dangerous. It wasn't your fault, Taesung said firmly. Transformation is agony. No one should blame themselves for what happens during it. Your caretaker did their best. Sometimes best isn't enough, and that's okay too. But you managed it. I had advantages, research, pheromones, training, and honestly, a lot of luck. There's no shame in your caretaker's choice to survive. Aaron guided Hwan to sit. We're developing new protocols based on Taesung's methods. Training programs for caretakers. Better preparation. We want to make sure no more cubs lose their caretakers during transformation. I want to help, Taesung said. I want to train others, both human and Vrathkan. Teach them what I learned. Hyunwoo nodded. I've been authorized to offer you a position. First pack bond. You would work with our people, teaching the old ways combined with new understanding. You would help train the next generation. I accept. Months passed. Taesung stayed on the station recovering and training. A young human woman named Yeonji arrived, eager to work with Vrathkan cubs. She was nervous but determined. Taesung taught her everything. How to read cub behavior, how to build trust, how to endure pain without fighting back, how to let love be stronger than fear. What if I can't do it? Yeonji asked. What if I'm not strong enough? Strength isn't the same as endurance, Taesung said. He'd learned this truth in blood and pain. You don't have to be the strongest. You just have to stay. That's all. Just stay. Rek, Sulla, and Vorn had taken to the training program naturally. They demonstrated proper behavior for new cubs, showed them that humans could be trusted. They had become teachers themselves, ambassadors between species. The alliance between humans and Vrathkan was formalized. Trade agreements, cultural exchanges, military cooperation. But the real bond was built on something simpler. Trust, earned through pain, proven through endurance. 1 year after the transformation, Taesung stood in the habitat with a camera crew. They were documenting the new training program for broadcast across both human and Vrathkan space. Rex, Sulla, and Vorn lounged nearby, fully adult now, confident and calm. New cubs played in another section, learning from watching the adults. "What would you say to people who call you a hero?" the interviewer asked. Taesung smiled. "I'd say they're looking at the wrong thing. I'm not a hero. I'm just someone who refused to leave when things got hard. That's not heroic. That's just what Pac does. But you nearly died, multiple times." "Yes, and I'd do it again." He looked at his cubs, his pack. "Some things are worth dying for. But more importantly, some things are worth living for, worth staying for even when every instinct says to run." "What do you want people to remember about this?" Taesung thought for a moment. Behind him, Vorn approached and pressed his massive head against Taesung's back. Supportive. Protective. "I want people to remember that strength comes in many forms. Physical power is one type. But emotional endurance, the ability to stay present in pain, to love something even when it hurts you, that's strength too. Maybe the most important kind." He touched the scars on his arm. They would never fully fade. He didn't want them to. They were reminders of what he'd learned, what he'd survived, what he'd gained. "Humans are soft," he continued. "We break easily. Our bodies aren't built for violence. But we're also stubborn. We hold on when others let go. We stay when others run. And sometimes that makes all the difference." The interview ended. The crew packed up. Taesung sat with his cubs, surrounded by pack, by family chosen through trial and pain and love. Across human space, the broadcast would play. Millions would watch. Some would call him brave. Some would call him foolish. He didn't care about either label. He'd learned the truth that mattered. That connection could survive anything. That love wasn't gentle or easy. Sometimes love meant enduring pain. Sometimes love meant staying when leaving would be safer. But love, real love, pack love, was worth it. Always worth it. Rek chirped, the deep adult version of the sound. Sulla pressed closer, Vorn's tail wrapped around them all. In this moment, Taesung was home. Scarred, changed, but whole in ways that mattered most. He'd survived the transformation. But more than that, he'd proven something important. That bonds between beings could transcend species, transcend pain, transcend everything. The pack was forever, and forever was worth fighting for.